Well, let's get started.
Yeah.
Enough of these shenanigans. It's either streaming or it's not. We'll figure it out another day.
Yeah.
Okay,
Unfortunately,
so okay, so for barely 4 minutes in, we're already melting down. Okay, so everyone, welcome to the May edition of our open hours as we're continuing our glorious regime since the foundation started of trying to get more information into people's hands. Showed what we're really serious at the foundation about trying to get more information, more releases, better quality out into the wider community and get things moving. And so we're continuing today with our vast array of people. Now we are promising going to try and keep to time this time. Honest gov, we will try. Hey, Tommy, MGers. Well, we're going to we'll have to start a poll for what everyone wants to call MonoGame developers. I have no idea what to do these days. So, as a run-up for what we have today, so a few little updates. So, the 3.8.4 release, we'd hope to be able to out sooner, but we also want to make sure the fact that it's right. There was a few issues in the rush out with the 3.8.3 release, so we started up the preview program for 3.8.4, and we've had several iterations on that. One of the key things the last thing to really get it over the line is we saw some issues around the size of the NuGets for 3.8.3, and so we're rapidly just trying to compress those down, and I believe there's a PR almost done, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this week we can actually get that over the line and have it done. The other minor issue that we want to get resolved for that release as well is that in VS Code, we've solved the issue about restoring the tools. So for the MonoGame Content Pipeline Editor, but one of our maintainers has noted the fact that that's not working for Visual Studio. So that will probably be the very last thing we get fixed. There's no more else going in. There's already more than we expected to go into this release because it's supposed to be out quickly. But the preview release has been rolling forward. We'll have one more preview, and then hopefully that'll be finish that release. Because we are biting at the tooth now, eager to try and get the 3.8.5 release out, because there are many big hitting things in this now. And you'll see in the first preview, which will be almost straight after the 3.8.4 release, because we got the previews for our DX12 platform, previews for the Vulkan platform as a proper template. And also the thing I'm more excited about is Harry's new content project solution. Sort of harken back to the XNA's days where everything's in your code editor, all your content, all your code, and you can build each however you want it. But we're still keeping the editor because a lot of people we recognize that, especially beginners, they like a little GUI to be able to manage these things. There's no right way, there's no wrong way, but the content project will be probably the thing, once it's released, the thing we would push along the most. Okay, so as a run-up before our main spotlight, I'm going to hand over to my good colleague Tom, who's going to talk about our budgeting. So as for full transparency, we're being open and honest about the money that MonoGame's getting in and also the money MonoGame's spending out. We've had a lot of big bounties that you've probably seen coming through. And obviously, one of those bounty holders is currently coming on today to talk about the work they've done. And we're not stopping there. So all the funds and all the support that we get from MonoGame, we're actively trying to use and consume that. However, it does highlight some other gaps, which Tom will go through, where we need your support. So we're still always looking for more patrons, more supporters. We're reaching out wherever we need to. But at our burn rate, there is limited life scale, but you still want to keep going as fast as we can. So I'm going to stop talking over you, Tom, and I shall hand over to you.
Hey, thanks, Simon. So yeah, it was something that we talked about on our last board meeting that we should probably do an update on our budget and get people, make everyone understand where we're at and where we're moving towards and what our goals are right now. So the budget, we've had a budget for a long time. We had a PayPal, MonoGame had a PayPal for 8 to 10 years that was getting donations here and there, and various people donated over the years, and that was what kept the basic stuff running. It wasn't very much, but it was something, and it kept, paying for some hosting and paying for this and that. And it built up over time because we didn't have any specific goals. So we built up a little bit of budget. So when we really started pushing seriously into getting an open source foundation, we started already with $12K in the bank from these old PayPal donations that had been around for a while, and they just trickle in throughout the year. And then we actually started the Patreon in late 2022. So for that first 12 months, we didn't have anywhere to land the money because we didn't have an official bank account. We weren't an official corporation of any kind. So it kind of stayed in Patreon. So when we finally opened the MonoGame bank account, for the foundation, that brought in. And then that was all something that occurred because of Relogic. When the big Unity debacle, occurred, and the need to push for more independent sources of game tech that weren't kind of tied to a shareholder was obvious. Relogic made a very generous donation to several different open source projects, and MonoGame was one of them. So at that point, they had offered to us $100,000 to kick off the foundation and to get things moving. And also with that, it was also a monthly contribution. They're also contributing monthly to the MonoGame project and have been since late 2023. So that's where we started with at the end of 2023. We started with 117K in the bank, and hey, let's start doing something now. And I guess you can go to the next slide here. So that starts us with 2024. So in 2024, we had started with the 117K. And we had moved on to focus on where Patreon was, right? So at the time, we were making about $400 a month in Patreon, but over 2024, it doubled, and we've gotten to $800 a month in Patreon, which is great. That's the direction we wanted to head. That kind of left us where we're basically bringing in $20,000 a year in donations, between most of that coming from Relogic, but a good chunk of that also coming from Patreon donations day to day. We started taking in some donations at the end of last year also again on PayPal, and also in GitHub. I forgot what they call their thing, GitHub something. But we enabled those, but they're really not big sources of income for us, so that doesn't help us all that much. But they're there for people that feel more comfortable donating one way or another. PayPal has the least fees. Patreon has fees, unfortunately, and GitHub has. I think their fees are super light, but we don't have a lot of sponsors through Patreon at the moment. I think it's just like 4 or 5 people at this point. So that's where we are as far as income for this last year. We don't have a ton of expenses, or we didn't when we started 2024. Our hosting is $100 to $150 depending on what's going on month to month. We had some legal fees just because we were dealing with becoming an official nonprofit, and we have some general stuff like we pay $500, I think, basically a year for for a suite of email and office tools and stuff like that. All pretty reasonable budgeting. We paid out some bounties in 2024, the biggest one being the Xbox GDK stuff, which kind of kickstarted a lot of new engine, low-level development, and that it was really the basis of the DX12 implementation that is in the OpenPR right now. The Basis Universal, which is a texture compression tech that we added into the pipeline to get some better texture compression for platforms, whatever that was. Native API, that was something that was another big push to add a low-level C++ API or C API that we can then write all our new backends against, and that's something that I've been pushing. And then and improving our build process. We have to have a custom build of FFmpeg for audio and graphics and video processing. So with that in mind, at the end of 2024, we ended 110K because we actually had some income coming in and we didn't have that many expenses. So at the end of that year, I think it was in September, we decided that the foundation decided that we need to start spending that money. We need to start moving forward faster because we weren't moving as fast as we'd liked. So at first there was the idea of just hiring one person as a full-time maintainer, but instead what we ended up doing is we decided on two maintainers and splitting that, mostly because we had two different needs. We have one need, which is, the public repo needs someone that can be constantly looking at bug fixes, doing the smaller feature implementations that don't make sense for a bounty or could be done by someone internal, or if a bounty isn't picked up, keeping track of our PRs and reviewing them, and general just social media management, because you still need to do that in this day and age. We can't just step away from that. So Dom jumped in to do that work. And on top of that, I think he's also done a couple of other things, but that's generally what he works on. And then at the same time, we realized that we need to keep moving forward on consoles, and someone needs to really focus on that. So I jumped in to maintain the console releases, do this big push to a unified native backend so that it improves both our public repo and our console repos, as well as, we knew that future console support was going to be necessary as we had some new consoles that we knew were on the horizon. So that's where we decided to start paying myself and Dom as maintainers. That's paid off. Our PR cleanup has gone really well. Our issues are down. We're being more active on maintaining console stuff. You can see some of this as a result of, the Switch backend is a new native backend. The Xbox backend is the new native backend. It's being held up right now by getting this TX12 merge in the public repo. But as soon as that's done, then the new Xbox backend, it will be shared with PC, and that's there. And we're in the middle of getting done with PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4, re-implementations off this new code base. So all that stuff is paid off, and we're happy with that. But it is our biggest expense. So that brings us to 2025. So for 2025, unfortunately, over 2024, we got to $800, and we kind of stuck there. The Patreon is kind of, just hovered around $800. So we really haven't. This is a Sierra shirt. Yes. It stuck around $800. We're looking at ways to improve that. In general, I think the foundation believes that we need to have a little bit more outreach on, getting flashy things that people are excited about. So we're looking to do some more stuff with some better starter kit type tutorials and starter kit type templates that will, be good places for people to jump in. We also decided that, I don't remember exactly when, it's February or March, we decided to add Simon as a maintainer as well, mostly because of the need for someone to really kind of hone in on a lot of the tutorials and documentation stuff. And also because we needed a push into automating our build process. We found that over the last year, we didn't release builds very often. It was getting a good build out was difficult. It took some real effort, and it was hard to, get everybody organized to do it. So we've kind of pushed towards getting a more automated build management setup so that we end up with almost one-click releases, and try to get to a new standard where we do preview releases, we verify the preview release is good, and we do an official release so that we have something very clean and that works for everybody without causing too much disruption, and that we can do releases on a more frequent basis. It's not, I don't know if we decided exactly what the timeline is, but, at least, every month or so, we want to have a release, with the latest changes in the repository. So with that, at this point, we're projecting, because our Patreon is still at $800, we're projecting around 21K of donations coming in. But because of our maintainers that we're pushing forward all these other things, we're looking at 120K worth of expenses. So we're on a race to zero at this point. So we knew that this was going to happen. In in our plans have been to do two things. One, we want to try to increase our donations, our Patreon donations. We added PayPal and GitHub donations for this reason, in order to see if we can get some more people in. Also, we're going to do some pushes to some of the bigger players that could be donors. There's some high profile monogame titles that have donated in the past. We're going to reach back out to them at some point and see if we can bring in some donations from those higher profile titles that have done very well, and hopefully that can help us bridge that gap as we move forward. But really, what I'd like to see is more individual donations, and that just means growing the community of developers who are using monogame. And at the end of the day, that just means improving monogame. That's what's going to get us there. So that's basically where we are budget-wise. We figure that the next big steps here are, improvements of monogame in order to attract more developers, to make people aware that there are big monogame titles out there, and that they can build anything that they want to build there, even if it's 3D. Some of the things that we've been doing, including like the resources page and stuff like that, was made to suggest to people that those are the kinds of things you could be doing. Is you could be doing bigger things, because the whole point of monogame is it's not an engine; it is a piece that you can add things into as you need to build a bigger, to build your game the way that you want to. So I think with that outreach and talking to some of the bigger players about getting some bigger donations into the foundation, I think we'll get past this shortfall. But we also just want to grow the community, because we have, that's something that we've been keeping in mind over the last year, is that we need to grow the community more. So yeah, that's basically where we're at.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom. Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, Tom, Thomas. So anyone who's on the online.
Yeah.
Oh, easy slip then. I mean, the other thing to note is, because we're working on other ways to showcase just the full capabilities and possibilities with monogame. So that's why we also start up both now the 2D and 3D showcases in the Discord. And kudos to everyone who's showcasing what they're doing out. We've noticed some 3D titles on itch.io, which we're keen to get those people in to talk about their experiences and showcase what they're doing. So anything's possible, given the amount of effort you want. There might be not a GUI or a friendly way of doing it, but we're all programmers at heart, and we're building these things out. And no matter what you're using, whether it's a framework, whether it's engine, or anything else, it's the passion and creativity that goes into creating these titles rather than just the tools. But we are also trying to make sure the fact that you have all the tools, all the resources. We have one of the best communities out there. If you just look at NuGet, for the amount of libraries and things that are out there to help people do things, although as the foundation, we probably need a better way to collate and promote some of the really good packages out there. But also that's where we lean on you, the community, to talk about these things. But anyway, talking about these things, Chris, do you want to try and do a mic check?
Sure. Does that sound good?
Yep. There we go. Because I think it's time that we hand over the stage. Now this can be interesting. I'm going to stop my sharing of screen, because Discord doesn't. Oh wait, there we go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
And I'm just going to say I have a meeting at 12:30. It's sort of important, so I'm going to drop out. But I might be back later for the Q&A.
From my perspective, I'm hoping we'll be done quickly on this, because unfortunately I've also got to run.
We'll see.
Yeah.
So anyway, right.
Mine's not important, Tom. You're good.
Okay. Well, no, I wanted to watch it. Unfortunately, I have a meeting.
Well, we have a recording. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
there can
could
only
go
be
wrong?
one bearded person on stream at a time.
Yes. Right, Chris, the stage is yours.
All right. So hey everyone. My name is Chris. A lot of you know me as ArisTurturtle or ArisTurturtle Dev in the community. And I wrote a book, pretty much. This was the 2D onboarding tutorial bounty. This was something I originally started as a Udemy course a while back, but then I lost all of the footage that I was filming for that, and I got really upset and decided not to continue the Udemy course because I didn't want to refilm everything. but then the bounty kind of sparked my interest again, and so I came back to it and wrote the tutorial. Um, so this is building 2D games with MonoGame, a comprehensive tutorial series, also aka a book. Before we get started, I do want to get some quick acknowledgements out of the way. First and foremost, the MonoGame Foundation, just my gratitude for its maintainers and everyone who's contributed to the framework over the years and who've preserved this and helped evolve it to where it is now. Simon, I want to thank you. A lot of you don't know, but Simon's basically been the proofreader and editor for the majority of the tutorial. We've had some funny arguments back and forth on some things that I didn't agree with or he didn't agree with, but we got it worked out in the end. Vic or Victor, I'm not sure what you'd like to be preferred to call, but the maintainer of Flat Red Ball and Gum, huge help in this. He contributed to the UI tutorial chapters. And helped bringing Gum into the tutorial as an external tool that can be used for user interface in your game. And finally, I just want to thank the MonoGame community because you guys have all honestly been one of the best communities I've been a part of in my entire game development journey. Yeah, I don't want to get sentimental, so I'll move on. So a little bit about me because I wrote a tutorial. So why should you read a tutorial that I wrote? Again, my name is Chris Whitley. I use MonoGame. You want to learn MonoGame. I wrote a tutorial and I'm heavily engaged in the community. And that really should be all that's needed, right? You want to learn it and I wrote a tutorial, but that's, this slide's actually kind of dumb now that I'm actually looking at it. But I just kind of explained a little bit about this. I've been doing game development, not professionally, mostly hobbyist for around 15 years. I've gone through various frameworks and engines, from Love 2D to Unity to Godot, 3D Game Studio. I think A3 made that. I've gone through a lot. I've gone through a lot of learning new frameworks and learning new tutorials and understanding the pain points of what it's like to try to start. Like, you already know the language that it's using. You just want to learn the tool itself, like how to use the actual framework. So I'm very familiar with that, jumping between all of those different things. When I first started learning MonoGame, there weren't really a lot of available resources or guides out there. A lot of it was old X and A books, which are still extremely valid to use, since MonoGame is an X and A replacement. But it felt weird reading books from like early 2000s, and we're in like the late 2000s, and I feel like something more modern should be available. And then a lot of feedback that I was getting was just go look at sample projects, read through other people's code, see how they did it, which I'm sort of adept at doing, but that's not really something that someone new coming into it should have to do. You shouldn't have to go look at a full project to kind of break it down yourself and understand what's going on. As far as the community engagement part, a lot of you might know I'm constantly engaged with the community on the Discord. Previously on the forums, yes, MonoGame has forums. You can put it on the bingo card, Lupin. Answering a lot of questions. I see a lot of new users coming in. I see the pain points that they have. I see the questions they are talking about. So I was able to gather all of this information and my background and the working with the people in the community to kind of understand what it is that a new person coming into MonoGame would really need to understand to kind of get off the ground and get going building their first game. Part of this slideshow didn't load. Show anyway. I'm not sure why part of it didn't load. That was weird. So let's talk about the project that's being built with the tutorial. It's a game called Dungeon Slime because I'm not very creative. It's a dungeon themed game with the slime, so Dungeon Slime it is. The game itself is actually a snake-like game. So you're basically building Snake, but it just has a dungeon theme with like visuals and the slime aesthetics. Snake was chosen because it's a very simple type of game to create that connects a lot of pieces together that you would learn in game development, from input management to collision to um, rendering, audio, everything that you would need to like understand at a foundational level, you can get from recreating a Snake game. So this specific one, some of the features in it are animated sprites with the slime and the bat sprites. It does have collision detection and collision response. The collision responses specifically talked about in the tutorial and included in the game are blocking responses, bouncing, and trigger responses. We do have sound effect and music in the game. User interface with custom styling done with the Gum UI tool, again, which is maintained by Vic, a part of the Flat Ball stuff. And then we have also multiple game states within the game. So you have a game state for the title screen, which has a state for the title menu and the options menu. You have in the actual game itself, you manage game states between the game playing, the game being paused, a game over state, and how to go back and forth between those different game states. Oh. So a little bit about the philosophy when I started writing the tutorial. One of the biggest things that I wanted to make sure was happening was that the tutorial was written from a code first approach. And so what that means is that the tutorial focuses on practical implementations of things that you would do when creating a game from code only solutions. The reason I did that is because there are a ton of tools out there that after you go through this tutorial, you can go and then use those tools. Like one of them is Texture Packer to create texture atlases. In this tutorial, you'll actually learn how to create a texture atlas through code and create an XML file, configuration file for the texture atlas. And the XML file is very similar to the same style you would get out of something like Texture Packer or other texture packing tools. So I wanted to make sure that as a user and a reader, you understood these approaches from code first. That way, when you do move on to use these tools, it's an easier transition to move into using these visual GUI tools that export out data that you then have to import into the game because you understand it at a lower code level approach first. The other philosophy I had was that the tutorial should have progressive complexity throughout the tutorial. So we start off easy. We start off with really simple concepts and foundations, and each chapter then builds off of the previous chapter. So as you progressively get through the tutorial, it becomes more and more complex as you go through, but you're building off of all those things so you have a solid foundation the whole way through. Another part of this tutorial that I was very adamant about was creating reusable components. In this tutorial, that's done at the very beginning. When you first create your project, you're going to create a class library that you then add as a reference to your main game project. One of the reasons I did this is actually something I've found is missing in a lot of XNA tutorials, a lot of older MonoGame tutorials that I've written. No one really talks about creating a class library. It's just like, we're going to make this game and we're going to throw all these things into our game project. So instead, throughout the tutorial, I'm having the reader create a class library with all of the different components that we create throughout the tutorial, like the texture atlas classes, the input management system, audio management, sprites, animations. All of these things are implemented and done inside of a class library that the game itself references. That way, once they finish the tutorial and they want to move on to make, their own game outside of the tutorial game, they have all these reusable components that they can just plug and play into their new project and, have a lost for words, a running start. Yeah, a running start on the next project. And the other thing about the tutorial, the philosophy for it, was that it needed to include the complete game development cycle. And this is from the very beginning of setting up your development environment to creating your first project, going through all of MonoGame, all the way up to packaging Publishing and packaging your game into different archive formats so you can send it out for friends or upload it wherever, and then including steps on uploading it to a common distribution platform. The one chosen for the tutorial was for itch.io. So we'll walk you through the steps of taking your game and uploading it to itch.io so that you can share it out or sell it or do whatever you want to with it. So those were some of the basic philosophies going into this tutorial as I was writing through it. The tutorial structure itself, the first 4 chapters are the fundamentals. These just focus mainly on things like what is MonoGame, setting up your environment, creating a project, the basic project structure, things like that. After the fundamentals, it moves on into graphics and rendering, where you learn about the content pipeline workflow, the entire workflow itself, not just the MGCB editor. Learn about how assets are processed through the content pipeline, why that's important, what advantages you get from that, and the disadvantages of not using it. We go into working with textures, including scaling, rotation, layer depth, using origin to center elements, source rectangles to take a single image and break it into multiple sprites that are rendered, and then creating sprites and animated sprites. The middle part of the tutorial focuses on gameplay systems. So in here, we talk about things like input handling, creating an input management class, collision detection and response, and the audio, playing sound effects and music, and then creating an audio controller to manage that. After the gameplay systems, we go into UI state management. These start out, the first chapter, you'll basically just learn some basic fundamentals of user interface design, basic principles that you should kind of consider when designing a user interface. It's not really a specific implementation itself. I think someone just messaged me, but I didn't see the message. And then after that, after the fundamentals, we then go into using GUM as the tool to create the user interface for. And then after the USA management, we go into the game mechanics. This is where we take everything that we've learned through all the previous chapters, which is basically just building up this sort of tech demo at this point. And we take that tech demo that we've built and transform it into an actual Snake game. And we talk about the mechanics of a Snake game and how we can implement those into the demo that we've already built at that point. And then the final chapters are just the publishing, how to build the game to publish it so that it can be distributed to people for different operating systems, because there are different considerations you need to take when packaging things for like Mac and Linux. You need to make sure that the executable is actually executable, and that the permissions to execute it are preserved. So there's different archiving formats. So zip versus tar archive format. So it goes into that information, which is really good information that people should learn. And then again, deploying it up to itch.io. There's a whole chapter on publishing your game on itch. Some of the key features of the tutorial is that the instructions given in the tutorial are done in a cross-platform way. So when needed, when things need to be specified, the tutorial will show you how to do it on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So it doesn't just say here's how to do it on Windows, do something similar on Mac. It's going to give you all the instructions needed for all 3 operating systems. It has multiple IDE instructions, so it shows you how to do when needed, when it needs to be discussed, how to do something in Visual Studio, Visual Studio 2022 current, Visual Studio Code, and the .NET command line interface. Those are the 3 used. I know some people use Rider. I don't use, so I don't have as much familiarity there, so I couldn't really write anything in with Rider. So feel free for someone who wants to contribute to the tutorial to add a Rider stuff. There's also comprehensive code examples throughout every chapter. The code examples that are included, each chapter is structured so that it presents you with concepts about what the chapter is discussing, And the concepts themselves have generic examples that will walk you through like what this might look like when you do it in code. And then at the end of the chapter, you actually do the implementation of the concepts. And in those code examples as well, they're comprehensive. All of it is way overly commented, which I know is a huge red flag for most people. But for a tutorial, having this as many comments in the code as there is helpful for the reader to kind of see what the code is doing quicker than having to figure it out on their own. There is various diagrams, screenshots, videos included throughout almost every chapter that were all custom made for the tutorial. Particularly, I've got one on the screen right now. This is the one for the shader pipeline, which I'm actually quite proud of that one. That one took me a lot longer to make than I want to admit. And then at the end of every chapter is a test your knowledge section. So all of the concepts that you learn within the chapter itself, and some of these are going to include like the little note and tip callouts as well to make sure that the reader is actually reading those. There's a section at the end of every chapter that just features usually 4 to 5 questions about the concepts learned in the chapter, just to kind of reinforce the things that you were learning. The answers for the questions are hidden. You see the question, and when you're ready to see the answer, you can click it, and then the answer is revealed. So it's just kind of a little way to like quiz yourself to make sure that you understood all of the information you just digested throughout that entire chapter. The core concepts, which I've already spoken to a lot of these so far, is making sure that the tutorial does use the content pipeline workflow. There's a huge stigma around using the content pipeline, and I'm hoping that maybe through going through this tutorial that can kind of help ease some of that concern for some people, because the content pipeline itself is actually really good. It has a lot of advantages if you use it. There are some nuances to using it that we all know about. Working with the MGCB editor, a lot of those are just more learning how to use the MGCB editor and becoming more familiar with using it. Plus, there's also the new content stuff that's coming up soon that Harry's been working on. So this entire thing is going to be not even existent at some point. So that's cool. Again, as well, creating a class library. I wanted to make sure that the user understood creating class libraries and creating reusable components that they can use in more than just the project they're having now, things that they can carry on through other projects. Texture atlases were a core concept when doing this to introduce the concept of what texture swapping is, to make sure that the reader understands the advantages of using a single image texture atlas instead of drawing multiple sprites that are all individual files. That way you can excuse me, that way you can optimize drawing so that you're not constantly doing texture swapping, which is all explained throughout the tutorial. And then input management, which is something that a lot of people don't seem to focus on in tutorials. MonoGame provides a surface level API for detecting input, and there's some things that can be expanded beyond that when you create your game to simplify things and manage input states. So input management and creating a core input management class that's reusable was another core concept. And part of that is also a short section of the tutorial talks about input buffering, which is a concept that a lot of people don't seem to be familiar with when making games. So we do go into input buffering a little bit, why it's important, and how to implement like a really simple input buffering key in the game. Some of the advanced topics talked about in the tutorial are going to be the sprite animations. The animation system is implemented completely from scratch, all from code and XML configuration files that the user creates, to give them a foundation of how sprites and animation, things like this work. That way they can take that knowledge when they go to use tools like Asprite and they export something from Asprite and they want to import it into their game, and Asprite gives them that JSON file. What do they do with that information? By having them build these systems themselves, they have a foundational understanding of what that JSON file is that Asprite gives them and how to use that when they put it into their game. The audio controller was another topic in this that goes into concepts of not just managing audio at a global level, for like your global volume, but also managing your audio resources. There are times when you want to do things like playing sound effects, and the sound effect may last like a few seconds, and then the game might get paused. So you need to pause the game, but you want the sound effect to pause. But then you need to be able to manage that sound effect instance and its resource and properly disposing of the audio. So it goes into those types of hence scene management. We get into that on how to. It creates a full scene management system within your game, so that you can transition between a title scene and the gameplay scene. Some of you might refer to scene management as levels or screens. I call them scenes. But the other advanced topic would be the UI systems with GUM. Again, 2 chapters in that on walking through integrating GUM within your game and creating a full user interface system using GUM. And then the last advanced topic that gets talked about in the tutorial is doing shaders. Specifically, the tutorial focuses on doing pixel shaders. It doesn't go into vertex shaders. You don't really use those too much in 2D games unless you're doing like some cloth physics or cloth transforms, things like that. So it mostly focuses on the pixel shading part of it. And for the tutorial, it implements just a simple grayscale shader and shows how to load that up in the game through the content pipeline, apply parameters and pass values to the shader, and then use it when drawing with the sprite patch. So this is when I do a live demo of the game. If anybody wants to actually, if you haven't seen the game yet, this is the game, and I have the volume turned down. It does actually have music, but I'm not going to subject you all to that. So this is the user interface that was created with GUM.
Yep, Chris, you can't see it yet. It's on the slides.
Oh, you can't see it.
No!
Thank you. I thought I
Point that
shared
out
my
before you start
screen.
talking about and showing it.
Hold on. Okay, there we go. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, yeah. So this is the game, Dungeon Slime. And so you can see, like, one of the things we implemented in the game is this scrolling texture background. So the tutorial does go into texture sampling and how to create things like this. This is actually a really small image that's just basically wrapped and redrawn and repositioned and gives the scrolling effect. And the tutorial goes all through that information as well on how to do that. This UI created with the GUM tool, the option screen, we get 2 different panels that, they do work. And these are all custom designed graphics for GUM UI. So the tutorial does walk you through creating a user interface with GUM at a basic level, just for like quick iterations, and then going into the GUM, like the code in GUM, and how to take your own graphics and assets that you have for your user interface and implement them into what GUM is using, so that you can create a user interface that visually matches the aesthetic you're going for in your game. And then the game itself, I'm going to dial real quick because I didn't have my hand on the keyboard. But the game itself, it's just a simple snake game. It's a snake-like game. Instead of the food being stationary, like you usually have in a snake game with like the apple, it's the slime eating the bat, and the bat is actually flying around the room to kind of add an extra level of challenge to the game. But other than that, at its core, it's just a simple snake game. And then when you do get a game over, you get the game over screen, and you can see the grayscale shader has grayscaled out the background of the game to kind of like signify, oh, the game is over, like the game state is now inactive, and you're on the game over menu. So, but this is the game. You can download the game. It's on MonoGame's itch page. If you want to go download it and try it out before you before you go through the tutorial, or yeah. So let's back out of that. Let's go back to the slides. If I can find. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's about the tutorial. So this is just like my Q&A section. These are just some questions that I thought of that people may want to ask from me, because I do write tutorials that I host on my website as well and contribute into the MonoGame documentation. So are there any topics you'd like to see covered in future tutorials? Any specific aspects of this tutorials when you read through it that you'd like me to explain further? Feel free to ping me on Discord and reach out to me for further explanations if things seem confusing. And for anyone new to MonoGame, how can the documentation just be improved for people that are coming into MonoGame and trying to onboard to use the tool? So there,
No,
I haven't been looking at chat. I haven't been looking at chat, so I don't know if there were any questions.
No, there's none so far. None so far. Well, none related to the tutorial. I mean, it goes to showcase of just how much effort you put into the tutorial. You put into also in the presentation about the tutorial.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, if anyone has questions about the tutorial, I'm always open. My DMs are me about anything. And just like as a final slide, this is the link to the tutorial, which I think I saw Vic post it a bit ago, but I'll post it again as well. There's a link to the tutorial. Here's contact information if you want to reach me on Twitter or Discord, or my GitHub account if you want to go look through all of the random code that I write. But that's the end of my presentation for the tutorial. And again, this is the actual tutorial itself. 27 chapters, technically 26. 27th one is just like a farewell, thanks for reading chapter. But yeah, I really hope this helps out people coming into MonoGame in the community. And if anyone goes through it and finds any issues or things that need to be expanded on in it, please hit me up, reach out to me, let me know. I'm happy to keep working on this and updating this documentation through the future if needed. Yeah.
Yep.
Adding online multiplayer. I think I'll let Simon answer that.
Yeah. Just I'll wind up into there now. Nope, you'll have to stop sharing your screen so I can take it over again.
Yep.
But
There you go.
There we go. Back in. So yeah, when we followed that tutorial, we've got already plans for several of the sort of follow-on tutorials from this. One for mobile, one for networking, and probably one for some more advanced 2D shaders. I think you did hint at some other shaders in the Discords as people were chatting about the actual tutorial. So including some of the interesting blocky effects of blurry things. So we want to do more with that to give people the tools. And
one of the ideas I had.
Go on.
I was saying one of the ideas I had for the tutorial was a scene transition shader that basically pixelized the screen like blocky and then unblocked it as it went into the game screen. But as I started writing the shader, I realized it was a bit more advanced for a beginner tutorial than it needed to be. So we just stuck to the gray cell shader.
Yep. We also have our open bounty for our 3D tutorial. It's had a bit of a rough start. The initial author had to pull out because of time constraints and things, but we quickly found another author to pick that up, and he's progressing through nicely. He's right now just, I think, in the polishing phase, trying to have more shinier graphics. Again, it's not going to be too heavy a 3D game because obviously if you're introducing people to 3D, you're not going to build Quake. You're going to build something simple but in 3D and understand 3D concepts, exactly the way Chris has done with the 2D tutorial, teaching all about sprite batches and drawing and rendering and layers and lots of other funky things. But expect more content. I mean, my ultimate aim is from the foundation perspective is we want to build like a university level schedule in there, and also following up like 3D content and also video content and all the resources. And probably lots of shorts. Everyone likes shorts these days. It's like quickly whipping through the phone and just 30-second videos and just keep going. So you make a tutorial game and just in every 30-second videos. Be all interesting. But there's lots of things like that coming up. Again, anyone has suggestions or features or things they'd like to see shown, then either post a feature request in the issues or drop into the MonoGame Discord, and it'll no doubt filter its way through to either myself or Dom or one of the other Foundation maintainers, so we can keep things moving on. Right, let's see if there's any other... Lots of chats. We've got green shorts. Why we got green shorts, Lupin, I have no idea, but hey-ho. But as I said, we're trying to keep to time now. We're running to 7 minutes. I'm not seeing any questions per se coming up in the chat, thankfully, because we're trying to get out on time. I've got to jump in a car and go to another town. The Android issue in 3.8.4. You might need to elaborate on that question. 3.3. Yes, sorry. So there was a critical bug that crept into 3.8.3 where you were not able to actually do builds to a release build. What that turned out to be is the fact that native AT is on by default in Android to make sure the fact that the actual package itself is as slimmed down as possible. But where that hit issues was with both the inbuilt content readers with MonoGame and also any custom content readers. So just AOT. Thank you, Dee. So any AOT build, if you should say. That's already been fixed in 3.4. So if you want to move straight up to the previews, that's fully able to work. We're just looking to finish packaging on that and hopefully get things running out and everything else. Where we can, if we want to get things out really fast, we'll do into the preview, and we'll try and make sure the fact that the actual full builds are as stable as built and tested as we can get. Oh yeah, people are posting up games that we need to port to the MonoGame. I mean, both Thomas has published Greedy Kids from his studio. I published one game, which was a small platforming game. And I've also got another game which was gifted to me some years ago, which we're in the process of upgrading. So there's more and more example games and things actually published out there. They can see the source for it.
If you don't mind me interjecting real quick, there's also
you can take the input question.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say last year, I talked or briefly emailed with Zach, the original creator of Infiniminer, to get permission on it. So you can find on my GitHub, there's a full port from XNA to MonoGame of Infiniminer. If anyone's interested in looking through that, see how Infiniminer was created and how it can be done in MonoGame today. It's basically being maintained by Incast now after the port was done, which he's added a lot of support in for through his KNI framework for things like VR. So you can do Infiniminer in VR, which is kind of neat. But yeah, there's also the Infiniminer sample as well.
I'm going to start chastising the community. They're showing things here that I've never seen before. They need to shout about these things. So for the Infiniminer, we probably need to get like a blog post on the Foundation site about that. So I think if we talk with Dom, Chris, we can get that published out. And Bananas is showcasing there was a Doom FPS starter kit someone pushed out. We probably need to get, from a 3D perspective, we need to get that out there as well. So yes, and as Dean's pointed out, we are looking to try and get more high quality, more high graphics things. So Ship Game's good. We did have a bounty out for refreshing the 3D graphics and that, because we can do better these days. It's just, at the end of the day, it's just content. The framework and everything else is fine. But we just need more content out there. But anyway, please everyone continue in chat. Although I'm going to have to call to a close this MonoGame open house for May. We hope everyone's had fun and enjoyed themselves. And thank you to Chris for coming along to shout about the months and hours of love and labour that's gone into the new 2D tutorial. And stay tuned for more and more content and things coming out there. So from us at the Foundation, to you and everyone else, we wish you an all. I should stop
Later.
sharing my screen at that point.
Thanks all. See you all
There we
next
go.
week.
Yep. And see, thanks, Dom, for hiding in the background. And goodbye, everybody.